Hey Jody, thanks for having me on the call today. My name is Afreen Allam, founder and CEO of SiNON Therapeutics. We mostly work on target drug delivery for neurological diseases, and what that essentially means is creating a Trojan horse for drug delivery, so getting things into the brain at a safer dosing, really improving quality of life for patients. And the best example is with chemotherapy, a lot of patients see side effects due to the drugs and not necessarily the tumors themselves. What we're hoping to do is target specific molecules, specific drugs to target sites, and specifically the brain, to help bring down the dosing, but really improve the efficacy of the drug itself.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining me. As I mentioned to so many people that I'm talking to, this is a conversation, and I want to basically bring a lot of attention to great startups and great small businesses that are doing amazing things. And you guys are still working. You're still working throughout this entire situation with the coronavirus. So I want to start with, how did you decide to do this company? I mean, why this? Why now?
Grew up in a very typical Asian family where medical school was the only option forward. And I kind of, everything kind of transitioned into preparing for the classes that I took, the volunteer work that I did, the research that I did was all going to help me get into med school. So in high school, I started volunteering at the Duke Cancer Center. And 2 weeks into it, I thought I was going to quit because it was so challenging to watch patients go through chemotherapy, really have their lives flipped upside down. And I kept going back week after week and ended up staying there 7 years as a volunteer. But during that time, I really formed a bond with these patients. And to this day, that's what really keeps me going. Fast forward a couple of years, went to college, and like every pre-med student, double majored in microbiology, biochemistry. But I wanted to do a research project, part of the CALS honors program that I was in. You needed to design a research project start to finish. And a lot of my classmates were doing it on campus, and I wanted to do something different and kind of stand out. So I ended up wanting to do a study abroad. My dad put 3 conditions, and he basically said it had to be in one of the IITs, which are the elite schools of India. And I think secretly he was hoping I wouldn't get in, and I dropped the idea. Luckily, I got into the one in Kanpur. I ended up moving to India for 6 months with my mom because he said I couldn't go alone, and worked with the head of the chemistry department one-on-one with him for 6 months continuously. And this meant like Monday through, I didn't get a single day off. And we were working, hours were like 8 a.m. to like 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. And during that time, the focus was how can we produce a technology that can help alleviate a lot of the side effects that patients see from chemotherapy. And the goal of the technology became targeting specific organs in the body. And there's a huge unmet need when you look at neurological diseases. We have Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, brain tumors, and there's really not enough medications out there that can treat these diseases. Specifically, like even with brain tumors, there's one drug that patients are given, and it was discovered in the 80s. So, I think it's about time that we help existing drugs or even newer drugs coming into the market be delivered in a more effective way.
Now, you are, one of the things I remember talking to you in the past, you're not a doctor. I mean, I shouldn't say not a doctor, but when a lot of individuals are looking to your studies, is it a product that actually helps the medicine go in? Is it the medicine itself? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we focus mostly on the drug delivery side of it. So we don't produce the therapeutics themselves. Our goal is to partner with pharma companies that either have things in their pipeline that typically don't get across the blood-brain barrier, which is our body's defense mechanism to keep everything out. And when we're healthy, we want it to function exactly how it does. But whether a patient has any neurological disease, kind of starting from a complicated one like brain tumors, all the way to a simpler one like ADHD, no matter what, we need the medications to get to the target site. And our goal is to help pharma companies that have things in their pipeline that don't get across, kind of repackage it into our nanocapsule that can deliver it to the target site. So that analogy of Trojan horse becomes imperative, where you're looking at the immune system can't recognize what's on the inside, and that's kind of what masks the drug and bypasses that blood-brain barrier to be delivered. The second aspect is things that typically go through FDA approval, and in phase 2, where the toxicity side of it comes into play, where a lot of these drugs start failing because they're too toxic. The dose that's given is too high and patients can't absorb that amount, but also the side effects are too brutal. So how do we minimize those, the dosing and the side effects, but really help those drugs get through the FDA approval? And that's kind of our goal of working with pharmas and doing partnerships.
And who's out there that's doing it right now?
So there's, a lot of other competing technologies kind of in the nanocapsule space, viruses. The issue is we kind of looked at the competitive landscape and saw what their limitations were and how can we improve on them. Anything that has a metal-based component eventually deposits in your kidneys and can lead to kidney failure. So you can't use, that option. You have nasal delivery, which is limits a lot of the size of what you can actually deliver. There's also the mucous membrane that inhibits a lot of medications from getting across. Poliovirus is being used at the Duke Brain Tumor Center, and even though they've had a lot of traction, it's basically used as a last resort because they have to drill a hole in the skull and then inject it into the brain. So you can just imagine the amount of side effects that come when not just the surgery aspect, but patients are more prone to infections. And so, there's, and the list goes on and on, but I think all of them come with issues with whether it's impacting the immune system or it's impacting the kidney function, liver function, and they're not long-term solutions, whereas our technology, it's a carbon-based nanoparticle that, our bodies naturally have carbon presence, so the immune system's not fighting back. We're also able to give 5 times the dose without seeing any adverse effects.
What is your hope for this? So you've worked really hard. You've partnered with individuals. Like, what is your absolute hope for this in whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, 10 years? What is that ultimate goal for what you are trying to create?
So essentially, we are creating a platform for drug delivery. So we're not, we're agnostic to which disease area we look at, but we want to become a tool that pharma companies can use and kind of branch out into. For example, Pfizer can use it for brain tumors and Eli Lilly can use it for Alzheimer's. But the goal is, how do you repackage their drugs and make them safer? And the whole mission around SiNON really became focused on quality of life for patients, because it's not enough just to keep a patient alive, but you need them to be healthy and have a functional lifestyle that they had previous to being diagnosed with whichever disease they have.
So let's go in a little bit of a different direction. Obviously, right now we're dealing with coronavirus. Everyone is trying to figure out exactly where their companies will be in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, in a couple of years. What has this done to you? How has this affected what your company, how your company is actually running right now?
So I think the main part of it was we were in the middle of getting our term sheets ready and hoping to begin fundraising within the next 2 months. And that's kind of been put on hold now because we can't do face-to-face meetings with potential investors. We can't go to networking events. We can't go to conferences. So a lot of that's been kind of pushing us back. But what we're doing is using this time to kind of pause, put hold, and like re-strategize of where we want the company to go, and really create a value-driven mission statement of, this is what we want to focus on. This is what we're doing, but also the why aspect becomes so much more important, because you're not just looking at creating a solution for drug delivery, but why hasn't this been done before? Why hasn't it been successful with other previous companies that have come in? So the goal is getting as much publicity as we can, whether it's through publications or attending virtual conferences, but we're continuing to make those connections via email and scheduling phone calls.
And how has it been going so far?
It's definitely been stressful and a very different way of operating. And one of the other issues that we've had is our current animal trials were being ran in India, and over there it's like complete lockdown, so we can't continue those trials until everything opens up again. And that's kind of what we've repositioned our focus of getting those publications, which initially we didn't have as much time to focus on because we had our trials to worry about, or we had investor meetings to go to. And so I think, it's been not all necessarily bad. It's just been we've had to revamp and kind of re-strategize how do we move forward and how do we continue moving forward, but really position ourselves to hit the ground running once the economy opens up again.
So if whenever we're in a downward economy, most people are losing their jobs. Most people are thinking about what's next for me as an individual. Some people are thinking about maybe this is the time that I'm going to actually start my own company. This is the time that I'm going to put that idea out there. What would you say to someone that is looking to do that right now? The unknown is happening. And because the unknown is happening, people are really thinking about, I need to start thinking about my family and number one, which is not a bad thing. Think about your number one of how you're going to survive. What's that advice that you'd give to someone that's considering starting a brand new business on their own?
So I think this is definitely the best time to do it, especially for people that have just been laid off. I mean, there's hiring freezes everywhere. So, use this time to be innovative and find a new alternative solution to, something that you've been thinking about for the past couple of years. And I think the risk of, not taking that chance is less now because you don't have anything to lose. And there's just more potential the upside is so much bigger right now, just because you have the time, you have, the resources, meaning just kind of using the time that you have provided, where you don't have to worry about employer conflict of interest or any of that, which makes it easier to start a company. And I think no matter when, at which point you start a startup company, there's no good time to do it, because there's always the ups and downs, and it's a constant struggle where you have to figure out, again, that why becomes so much more important, because that's kind of what keeps you motivated and keeps you going.
Well, you're talking about all the goods and all the bells and whistles, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to start a company right now. Talk about the bad things about starting a company about yourself.
So you're definitely not going to be able to fundraise in this economy. That's one of the biggest challenges. And I think the other drawback is, we can't hire people right now. We can't, we don't have the funding ourselves to do it. We don't have, we can apply for loans, but generally a lot of those loans are being given to bigger corporations that already are VC backed. And, smaller companies like myself lose out, where we, to keep the runway going, I didn't pay myself a salary. And so now I'm no longer eligible for some of the grants and the programs that are available by the government today.
So now I was excited, and now I'm like scared. So how are you finding ways to pivot? Because one of the greatest things about small businesses and small companies and startups, they can pivot very quickly in any situation, good or bad, high or low. So what are the things that you are doing to make sure that you see the light at the end of the tunnel?
So one of the main differences is that we're now focusing on getting those publications out, because we need the publicity and we need people to know that a technology like this exists. Eventually our goal is partnerships with pharma companies, but I think, right now we kind of need to lay the foundation of, these are all the trials that we've done. These are the results that we have. This is why it shows that it's a tangible product. It's not just a theory or something that's in our mind that we hope will work. We have results that have shown that it's promising for future use, and really, using this time to strategize, but also making connections and reaching out to potential investors, or reaching out to people that can make those introductions. And this is the time to do it, because once you kind of get in their queue of, especially with investors, there's a long waiting list. And if you show that you're still working hard and you're still making progress and you're still working to reach those goals, ultimately you're going to show the progress that you've made post corona, like the lockdown. And the biggest thing we can do right now is showing the traction of, you have, whether it's on the funding side or whether it's on just the trials, but you have to keep showing that you're making progress.
How has it been working from home and running a company as well? You are a woman Okay, you're running in life sciences, which is not a very, it's very, very difficult when you're like in the startup world and you're dealing with life sciences, and you're balancing a company and working from home with your family. How's that working out for you?
So I was actually in North Carolina for the past month, just got back to Boston over the weekend. And at least in North Carolina, we had more space. So we had a designated office space. Right now in Cambridge, we're in a 1-bedroom apartment. So my husband and I kind of take turns using the dining table as our conference room. But I mean, in general, being a female or minority in the life science industry, where even before when we were attending conferences, typical profile of all the attendees were the usual older white American males. And out of a room full of 500, there may be 1 or 2 females that you can actually count. And I have a picture on the stage at a conference here in Boston. I'm the only female standing there, and every single one of them are older white males in suits, and I'm just wearing a normal blazer with black pants. But it's just like, it kind of, and that ended up being their picture that they used for all their marketing, because they're like, oh, look, we got diversity. But that's kind of just the reality of, this industry. But in general, not just life sciences, I think being a female in the startup field, but also in the life sciences, kind of puts you at an advantage, because you do stand out when you walk into a room, and you are different, so people remember you, and that's, use it to your advantage.
I have to say that's one of the things that I enjoy, not only throughout my entire career, but also working with small businesses and startups. They stand out. You guys as a community, you stand out, whether it's in your neighborhood, whether it is in your industry, you stand out leaps and bounds because you're coming up with the most innovative things out there. So I think that's like really commendable that you're sticking through, knowing how hard it is, but yet the passion is very clear. It's like, it's definitely understood. This pandemic ends tomorrow. It ends tomorrow. What does your tomorrow look like?
I think the first thing is we start opening up our animal trials. We get those term sheets sent to the investors that we've started making those connections to see if they have interest. If not, if they can connect us to people that would be interested. And the main thing is we can't give up right now, because we put so much hard work into building this company and getting it to this point where we just got to keep going, and no matter what, we're going to figure out a way to do it.
Beautiful. Fantastic. So I will end all of interviews with just this one question. It could be long, it could be short. It's like whatever the answer you want it to be. But what is your ask? I'm trying to get a lot of individuals to pay attention to how important this community is. So what is the ask that you'd want more people to understand about you and your company?
2 things that we're looking for specifically are, any sort of funding, whether it's smaller grants that are available for minority-owned companies, women-owned businesses, or even things that focus, foundations that focus on neurological diseases. And that's kind of the first ask that we have to, these small grants kind of keep our doors open, and we still have to pay taxes, and we still have to do, all our bookkeeping. And those are all things that are day-to-day things that we can't really put on hold. So that's kind of what keeps us operational. We have to continue filing our patents and paying for our upkeep of those patents, and the legal costs are still racking up. But the other ask is focusing on the partnership route. If anyone kind of watching this knows of companies, whether it's big pharma, other small startups or biotech companies that are looking for a drug delivery tool, we're more than willing to try out different applications, whether it's a molecule that we've tested before or not. We can really range from small molecules all the way to large biologics. The scope is there. We just need to have the funding to kind of branch out into different options.
Just out of curiosity, and again, this is not my world, this is definitely your world. With the virus so large, they're talking about, there's a lot of discussions in regards to once the vaccination is created, it's still 1 or 2 years out before you get a mass production. Is there any way that, or have you even thought about it, where there's a synergy between what you're doing and what the needs are on a very, very large mass for what's happening right now?
So I think, with everything going on with like the publicity of, needing the vaccine quickly, I think it's put a lot of light or shown a lot of light to life science companies and shown how the FDA approval process can take very long, and it's helped kind of fast track that. But I think, we also have to take the precautions of making sure that we're not putting out drugs that are harmful in the long run to patients. And so we kind of need to develop a balance between the two, but not just the timeline, it's also the amount of funding that goes into producing something to get to clinical trials. And that needs to be, whether it's on like a larger economic scale or even within the pharmas, we need to develop a way that can be, do a lot of these testing at a cheaper and more economically friendly way, where startups aren't burning through cash to get to that end goal, because we aren't big pharma. We don't have endless bucket of money that we can continue running our R&D operations and continue paying for clinical trials that may or may not give us the results that we're looking for. But this is part of research. We have to continue to be innovative and have to come up with new alternatives and come up with new solutions. And I think this, it's unfortunate that we didn't have enough testing and we didn't have all of this kind of prepared, but no one could have predicted it. And, kind of learning from everything that's going on right now and how to implement that for the future is going to be huge, and especially for biotech and life sciences, because we've seen the urgency and the need for development of new drugs, and the innovation part of it kind of never stops.
I have to say, you said that so, it was well articulated, so I thank you very much for that one. It was the thought was in my mind in regards of like, how do I get this out? But everyone is talking to me about the concept of just again, if it's developed tomorrow, doesn't mean that everyone gets it tomorrow. And so I think it's like one of the, it was great and user-friendly explanation in regards to what happens and the need of the fact that more and more life sciences need to get a little bit more fast-tracked. Mm-hmm. Because everyone knows the rule of thumb where a tech company can get it very quickly, whether it's a retail product, et cetera, which is like, it's fantastic. But life sciences, it takes a lot longer, which is needed because the testing has to be there, the papers have to be there, the validation of the individual that's actually running the entire program. But knowing that more eyes should start paying attention to life sciences is fantastic. So I thank you very much for the explanation. Thank you very much for your time. And I look forward to seeing what you guys are developing in the next couple of weeks, couple of years. And anytime that you want to come back here and talk about what's new, you have a home here on.
Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me. This is a great kind of Q&A, and I love to kind of answer your questions, and hope to do it again soon.